Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J.
And I'm Cheryl Phipps.
And I'm Wendy Vella.
And we have no Shah this week because she is currently sick, but we have instead of Shah, or as not instead of, but we've got Naomi Barton with us today. Oh, she can tell that I'm really on form today. With us today, we have Naomi Barton.
Yay!
Yay!
Welcome, Naomi.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So Naomi is an audiobook narrator, and she's going to tell us all about the process and how it works and what you need to think about when you're when you're at the point where you think you want to start doing audiobooks. So, but first, before I start with all the questions, Naomi, I'm just going to read out your bio. So, Naomi Barton is an audiobook narrator who spent years travelling the world as a drama teacher before returning to New Zealand in 2020. She works from the top of the South Island in her home studio and has had the pleasure of supporting many indie authors into their first audiobook release. As well as narrating, Naomi is an indie author herself and is also a director and producer for a video production company. For fun, she talks with her cats when her teenage daughters don't want to listen to her, and enjoys delighting her husband with her many good ideas.
We all do that.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, they all love our good ideas.
He does love them. He's a good listener, which is important in my life.
Absolutely.
Yes. If you're the narrator, he needs to be the listener. Awesome. So Naomi, can you just start out by telling us how you got into audiobook narration and the indie world, and where did it all start out?
Well, it all started out when I started writing myself. And as my bio said, I come from this background of teaching drama, and I was back in New Zealand, post first lockdown, and I decided to have a go at writing a romance novel, and I had great fun doing that. And I've always loved audio. So I've listened to audio. I mean, I had cassettes when I was a kid, right? And then I had CDs and all of that. And now I obviously listen off my phone. But audio books have been, I guess, a part of my life. I think in the same way that I've heard a lot of writers talk about that sort of going into a book and just then you emerge, right? That's your safe place. I think audiobooks have always been like that for me. So as I'm writing my own novel, of course, I'm just thinking this has got to be an audio. Like I could hear it in my head. And I've done some sort of work with students creating radio dramas, and doing radio drama is a great unit to do in the middle of a pandemic with distance learning, just to tip any drama teachers out there. But radio dramas was something that I'd sort of played around with students. And so I decided I wanted to learn how to create an audiobook. So that's where the inspiration came from. But things kind of took off quite quickly, and some of the details are a little bit fuzzy to me now, to be honest, because I think I went and I got some information and I did a little bit of training in voiceover. So I was looking at how I could transfer my skills into working from home, being self-employed, and then I think I just started talking to people. I was in Facebook groups for self-published authors anyway. I started talking with indie authors, and then I was promoting myself as a voiceover and an audiobook, and I got some clients. I got some people some authors that wanted to have a go at doing audiobooks. And I suppose the first couple of authors that worked with me, there are New Zealand voices out there, but they had books set in New Zealand and they wanted a New Zealand accent. Yeah. So that kind of got things going. But as Cheryl knows, I can do different accents as well. Fantastic fun. But yeah, so that's how I got into it. And I have narrated a couple of my own. And yeah, now I've done well over, I think I'm up to 17 in the last sort of, yeah.
That's a short time frame, isn't it, that you've been doing it?
Yeah. So it's been great fun. That's how I got into it, Trudy.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. And so how long does it take? Like how long is the process for it? Or just making me wonder about that. Like how many is it from when you very first get given the manuscript to done product?
So I think that probably, like, that varies. I mean, to start, the first ones, it takes forever. It's like very involved, right? Because you're learning as you go. And I did a lot of, like, you know, I would be timing myself in terms of like trying to learn techniques for how I could be recording more efficiently. There's recording techniques called punch and roll, which allow you to sort of edit as you go, or, you know, how you pick up mistakes and all sorts of stuff, and the various softwares that you might use. But, you know, they talk about, like, in audiobooks, they talk about the per finished hour. So that's the rate at which you talk about the payment. But for each of those finished hours, you know, you can anticipate that your narrator may have spent anything from probably 8 to 10 hours at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a new narrator, to maybe 2 to 3. Like 2 would be, most of the really professional narrators that I've communicated with, they talk about like 3 to 1. And that's included, so that's their reading it, that's their prep, it's their pickups, it's all of the stuff that goes into creating that book. And, you know, professional narrators will spend, you know, up to maybe 6 hours in their booth a day. I find 3, I'm usually beginning to just make more mistakes, and I'm getting tired, and I want to sort of do something else, or one of my other projects at that point. So I think those things depend on the time frame. But yeah, you know.
Also the complexity of a book, wouldn't you say, Naomi? Because if you're having, well, let's use one of my books for an example, the fact that there's so many voices, so you could have like several voices in a chapter, and you are having to remember to fall into that voice as soon as you're starting the next sentence. So it has to be kind of on automatic, really.
Well, there is that. I mean, I always record like the character voices, you know, so like I'll have a little file with all of those character voices, so I can go back. And like, for instance, I'm doing a series for an author at the moment, and I mean, it's wonderful, right? Because there's the whole town. And so I just have this file of all of her characters, because you know, somebody might appear in book 1 but not come back again until book 3.
Right.
Oh, now hold on, how and they're just small characters, right? But you want them to be different. So yeah, those things take time. I'm doing a non-fiction at the moment, and there's a lot of scientific terms, and I mean, I probably spent at least 30 minutes yesterday just, you know, like how to pronounce endophrine. Oh
yeah,
that word.
And so the funny thing with that is that, like, there's no character voices, but trying to sound natural as you go into endophrine, which
well done.
No, that was incorrect.
No, you know what? You could have passed that off, because
we wouldn't have known.
We wouldn't have known.
But that's the whole idea. You've got to sound knowledgeable. Like,
you know, it has to sound natural, and you don't want to be doing this sort of like, I'll just record that word and just pop it in, so it's you know, like, no. That's not. And sometimes the word that you say before that complicated word makes it sound different. There's just like weird little things that happen like that. So yeah, it does. It depends upon the complexity of the book. And but you know, like, the upside of having lots of characters is, yes, it can be a little time consuming, but it's also really good fun. And you get to know the characters. That's what I love about, you know, that sort of having that relationship with an author and doing a series. It's like, oh, yay, I get to do Angel again, or, you know, you like that character. So that's very enjoyable.
Just quietly, I like Angel too.
she's a southern gal.
Southern girl from Cheryl's books.
Look, I just think that, you know, it would be really good self-care for anyone to just find a quiet space and talk to themselves as Angel anytime, because like, she's just got a heart of gold.
Absolutely.
You know,
in case you want to know, we're talking about Cheryl's books and one of her characters.
I know, sorry, we're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we are. We've been
back off the rabbit hole.
Okay,
well, actually, I leapt ahead, and I just wanted to go back quickly and talk. So, explain what an audiobook is, just in case there's someone out there in the world who doesn't know, and how do people listen to them, and, you know, just a little bit of the background on audiobooks, like who listens to them, how many people are listening to them, just all that kind of thing.
I mean, I guess audiobooks are any kind of anything that's an ebook or a printed book that you're going to listen to either, you know, on a, like there are still self-published authors who will create CDs, because there is actually a group of people who want to listen to it on a CD. But most of us are obviously listening to it off our phones, and Audible is obviously the app that many people are familiar with, but there are lots and lots of places where you can access audiobooks, like as a subscription service or a library service. There are free audiobook places. YouTube, I hear a lot of people talking about listening to stuff on YouTube. So yeah, that's audio. I mean, audiobooks, there's been the market for audiobooks has increased. More people are listening to audiobooks now than ever before. You know, audiobooks used to be kind of thought of this as this thing maybe for people who were vision impaired, you know, or who couldn't access reading, maybe for literacy challenges, this kind of thing. And that's still very much, you know, like there are wonderful services available for people with visual impairment to listen to audio. But I think, like podcasts and just like so much of the content that is available to us, people really have just discovered that listening to audiobooks is nurturing, entertaining. It allows me to sit on a subway and hear a story at the same time, or do my housework and hear a story. And I think that the quality of audiobook production has improved immeasurably, you know. And so there are people now who would just prefer to listen to audio than read. I know personally.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, I mean, my
I
eyes get tired. You know, I'm using a screen a lot during the day, and yeah, I just like to listen. And apparently the science tells us that what happens in your brain when you listen to an audiobook is the same as what happens when you read. And so, you know, I think that perhaps just a lot of the stigma or idea that it's not real reading, or it's just become a whole lot more legitimate, and it's a growing marketplace. And we were talking before we went live about the millions of people that are listening to audiobooks, and obviously the States is our big marketplace for our ebooks. And according to the latest statistics from the Audio Publishers Association, 6% of the American population are listening to audiobooks daily. And there was a little bit of concern around the pandemic that, you know, because people weren't doing long commutes and things, that maybe listening would go down. But evidently the market is quite stable. Romance sales have gone up, self-help listening has gone up, and business has gone up. So yeah, I think it's a continuously growing market. I think that people, like children, I think a lot of parents during the pandemic wanted their kids to have a break from screens. So
I mean,
you know,
I listen to it.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
I don't get a chance to read as much as I would like, because I work most of the time. And so when I'm in the car, I listen to my audiobooks. When I'm at the gym, I listen to my audiobooks. When I'm cycling at home, not on the road, obviously, I listen to my audiobooks. So for me, and when I'm laying in bed, when I go to bed at night, I listen to my audiobooks. So that means that I'm getting that reading done, but I'm not reading.
And there are also people who, I haven't used it myself, but there's a Whisper Sync, which enables you might be reading your ebook on your Kindle, and then you get in your car and it just merges over into the audio.
I've got that, it's great.
Whoa, pretty amazing. So, you know, if you're going to devour ebooks, you know, for some people just making that transition over into audio is a natural thing. For some people it's like they exclusively want to listen. In the same way that, you know, you have your group of fans who love what you do, there are also people out there who just follow particular narrators, and that's a really, you know, people just have particular tastes about what they want to listen to, who they want to be in their ears, because it's a very intimate kind of experience, isn't it?
The narrator makes everything, makes the book. The story, you know?
And you can listen to samples, and quite frankly, I would always do that before I bought an audiobook, because sometimes you can't listen to that voice, you just can't. It's just kind of grating,
even if it's your favorite author.
And it's honestly, I think it's a very
it's a very particular thing, you know. And I
It
mean,
is, totally.
you know, like, and I mean, I can read books, or I might know an author and think, I just would love to narrate their book, but I might know my voice probably isn't the right fit. Or, you know, you'll talk to a lot of narrators where they're like, oh, you know, I'm always end up doing Southern cozy mystery. And I just want to have a go at doing a, you know, like a romance, an adventure romance, or a paranormal. But it's like their voice naturally. So that can be quite hard for narrators sometimes, because I mean, I think my privilege has been like, I think I've done a little bit of everything almost, which has been great. And some probably are a better fit for my voice than others, but I always give it my best shot, you know, and it's fun to kind of listen to samples and work with the author to figure out what they want, you know, and how they imagine hearing this.
I think that's what an author needs, to know that it is a collaboration. It's not just your words going into this. It's the feel of the book, and it's the tone.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And truly, I'm jumping ahead into other things that you were going to ask about, but like I was really fascinated when I attended the conference, the Audio Publishers Conference recently, which was virtual, which was very convenient for me because I don't think I could have got to New York in February. But you know, like AI voices is something that comes up a lot in narrator circles, and people are very anxious about it, you know, like, because it's your livelihood, right? If you're a full-time narrator. And there is the influence of AI coming into narration. But one of the things that I really took away from it, which I thought was interesting because it absolutely resonated with me and the authors that I've worked with, is that you can't have a relationship with an AI voice. And most of the authors that I've worked with, it's like, you know, I understand that their books are very special to them, and they want to feel like that narrator is invested in trying to bring the best out of the story, that they are listening to what the author is hoping for, that they're intelligent enough to do a bit of research about what that genre is, and all of those things. And I mean, I think that is I think for any indie author out there thinking about narration, they want to be thinking about that relationship too.
And it's not just the relationship, like when you think about AI or artificial intelligence, it's not just reading the words aloud what you're doing, you're almost kind of acting it out in some ways. And the better audiobooks that you listen to are where you've got that kind of the tone and the voice and you're immersed in that world. It's sort of the next, it's like adding a layer or a depth to your experience of that world, and I don't think an AI voice will ever get that. So
I've just been researching to get my historicals done. Sorry, Naomi, I didn't come to you, but
I think that would hark back to Talking Classics with Joanna Lumley, sort of 1993, and listened to quite a lot. But anyway,
I actually did a massive amount of research, you know, like and listened to so many voices, and I wanted a man, and again, you know, that was just my preference because it was a historical romance, and my characters are very male heavy, my books. And I just researched, and some of them I just, as soon as I heard their voice, I was just like, oh no. Do you know, but then someone else would go, you know, that for me, I got this guy that I love, and I just love his voice, and he's brilliant, and so I went with him. But I mean, I think it is.
It's so interesting to me that you're going with a guy. Like that's an interesting thing.
I would never have seen that, even though I totally get that your books are male centric. It does blow me away as well, but I can see it. I see it. But I never would have.
And maybe historical is a little slightly different because it was a very male dominated world during that time. Not that our books are, but I think men are becoming more voices now, whereas I don't think they were. I mean, if you go back to the older books, I think but
okay, back to Naomi, back to the interviewing.
Just talking audio.
I was also thinking though, when you were talking about that, the speed is the other thing that often comes up. Like some people will listen to their audiobooks fast because they want to get through, because they just want to get through the story and they love it. And an interesting thing is sometimes authors will be like, oh, I think maybe it's a little slow. And, you know, when I get talking, sometimes I do talk quite quickly. And I think some of my earlier books, perhaps I was a little slow, but then because I didn't want to go too fast. But then on the other hand, you've got to remember that the listener is the first time. So it's quite hard to be objective when it's your book. You're very familiar with it. And then you're listening, oh, it's a bit slow. And it's like, but we've got to give that reader, that listener, an opportunity for their brain to kind of engage and know the characters. So I've heard that voice, and there's quite a lot to the psychology of it, I'm sure, from the listener's point of view. And then there's just personal taste. But the good news is that there is just enough out there for everyone. Everyone will find the voices that they love, and everybody will find the audiobooks that they love. And the indie authors will find the narrators that they're meant to work with too, because there's just so many wonderful narrators out there that want to help you get into audio, honestly. Yeah.
Could we talk about the process?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So let's talk about the process. How do you start out? How do you prepare? When you first start on a book?
So, like for me, when I'm working with an author, I think it's really important to have a contract, so that you're clear on the terms that you've agreed to in terms of the payment and the time frame, because sometimes an author might be working towards a particular release date, and figuring that out is really important with whatever else is going on in both the author's life and in the narrator's life. And that just sort of clarifies what the expectations are of the narrator and the rights holder, or author in this case. Then I want to read the book, because I want to, mostly by that stage, I know that I want to do this book because I've communicated with the person. But I would always want to be checking the book that it feels comfortable for me to narrate. Now, for some people, so that brings up another thing. It's like, if you were going to do something erotica or reverse harem, are you comfortable with that as a narrator? Or if this is a book that has got some political or religious thing in it, so you want to, as a narrator, you want to make sure that you've figured that out for yourself and that you're comfortable with that. So that's why a contract is important. And I also think it's very important for the author, so that you're protected, because unfortunately there are some narrators out there that it just gets messy and complicated when it's not spelt out. So I want to read the book so I can be, yes, this is what the person said that they were going to provide me with, and yes, I'm happy to put my name to this, either with my steamy narrator name or my regular narrator name, depending on what the genre or the feel of the book is. So I'm going to prep that. I'm going to be annotating as I go. So I've got, sorry, it's my cat. I've got it in my iPad with my lovely Apple Pencil, and I am marking it up. And sometimes, like, if I have questions that come up, about like the way a name might be pronounced and things like that, I create a spreadsheet with my author with the chapters listed, so that if I notice anything when I'm reading the book that I just want to get clarification on, or it's quite common to find typo, or maybe there's a dialogue tag or something that's been missed off. I think I've yet to read a book that doesn't have something like that. But if I notice that, or it's like, oh, it's just as a wee, I just need to check, I can put that in the spreadsheet and let the author know. And then that spreadsheet also gets used when the author is listening to the finished files. And if I've made a mistake, which just happens, it's natural, they can note that down, the chapter and the timestamp, so that we can do the pickup later. Because just as you're narrating, there's always going to be just flubs, or maybe just a strange noise, or you just the way you read things is different from how sometimes they come out naturally when you speak them.
And your eyes play tricks sometimes, don't
they?
Yeah,
they do. They really do.
It's not there.
Yeah, they really do. It's just a funny thing that. And then once I will always share the first sort of chapter, 15-20 minutes with the author. I mean, typically before we've actually gone into this arrangement, I've done a sample for them anyway, right? Because they want to kind of go, oh yeah, I love that, let's do it. But I'm going to give the author the first 15-20 minutes of the finished audio for them to have a listen and go, yes, that's great. Oh, I like that. I just wonder about this, or if there's any issues, that's their opportunity to give the feedback. And once you've established all of that, then you go for it. So it's too time consuming. Like, you can't just provide chapter by chapter and have this kind of long distance directed session. Like, it would take forever to do the audiobook. So there's that kind of opportunity to give overall feedback about the tone, the atmosphere, the style, the feel. And then the author needs to just trust, like, so you need, as an author, you need to be confident at that point. Like, if you're not okay with what you hear in that first 15, you need to say. But likewise, you know, like, I did a great project in August last year, and it was a romantic comedy, which was actually, it was really a really interesting challenge, because, you know, that dry humor, right? And so kind of getting the joke the way she wanted it to sound sometimes required, you know, her to give me that direction. Now, we did those as pickups, you know, like further down the process, and that was absolutely fine. And it was actually really helpful, because narrators like myself, you know, currently working from home studio, not for an audio publisher, we're directing ourselves the whole time. So actually having an author say, look, could you just try it a little bit more, you know, intense, or, you know, like, I think her voice might be a little bit more high-pitched and squeaky. It's actually kind of nice, because otherwise you're doing it all yourself. So I think it's important to not be, you know, you don't want to be that client, but you don't have to apologize for saying, oh, look, there was an error there, or I just would really love it to sound more like this. Sometimes I've had authors share samples with me of something that they've heard, like another narrator, where it's like, I really liked this. And you do your best. But I think if as the author you're working with that narrator, and it's like, you feel like you're having to micromanage it, maybe that's not the right narrator for you. Right. I went totally down a rabbit hole there, Trudy. I was talking about the process. Sorry.
It's okay.
No, I think it's all valuable though, because you know.
I record the book. I record the book. Depending on the project, I'm working with an audio editor who does the mastering and editing for me, because that allows me to do more audiobooks. Sometimes I will do it myself, depending on what the project is. And then as those files are finished, I'm sending them through to the author, and the author is proofing them. So the author, or somebody that the author trusts, needs to listen carefully and follow along the text and make sure that the text is the same as the audio. And that's their opportunity to put in little pickups, or little, oh, I just would like this a bit different. And I usually say, I'm going to do all the pickups at the end, because I just find it more efficient, because otherwise it just gets a little bit chaotic with many chapters. And I think also there's sort of a momentum and a flow to the book. I don't want to be in chapter 17 and go back and do a pickup in chapter 3. For me, I just like to kind of tell the story. And then once the author is happy with the finished files, the pickups are done, they've checked all of those, the job is done. I usually get a 25% deposit from the author to secure that place on my calendar whenever they, you know, so we figure that out, and then they pay the rest when the project is finished.
How long does the process take you? I know that, like, do you have, well, I think we've discussed that already, but are we talking, you know, like a month, or,
no, well,
you know,
me,
for you?
Yeah, for me, I think I can. So like the series that I'm doing at the moment, like, I mark out sort of 10 working days to do the narration. As you know, I've got kids sometimes that are doing home learning, and or things might be happening, but I try to allow myself sort of about 10, and that's for maybe a sort of 60,000 word novel. Yeah. And then once she's finished all of the proofing and stuff, okay, I'm going to spend maybe a couple of hours, probably 2 to 3 hours doing the pickups and fixing up all of those last bits. And you know, the author needs to choose a retail sample, so that little bit that you listen to on wherever you're getting your audiobooks, they need to decide, oh, what do I want that to be? And that needs to get organized as well. So there's always a little bit of extra sort of stuff around the sides. But, you know, I mean, some narrators can probably work faster than that, and some are going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, sometimes, you know, I know that with indie authors, they've always got a million things happening as well. You know, you don't want to overwhelm the author with, there's 15 chapters, can you listen to them tonight?
Yeah.
Because it takes concentration, right, to do that proofing, and you want to be relaxed and enjoying it, hopefully, when you're listening to that. So I think that there's sort of a tempo that you figure out with those clients as well. That's what I have found, which has been really, really good.
I think it is helpful, actually, as an author, to get them not en masse, but to have, you know, a few to listen to at a time, so that you've got a little bit of continuity, but you're not going to have to sit there for hours and hours.
Because it is quite.
Yeah. Can we ask about pricing? How does the costings work?
So there's lots of ways, well, not lots, there's a couple of key ways that you can go into audiobooks. So as I said before, there's the per finished hour rate, and then there's what's called royalty share. So royalty share is when the narrator will do a reduced per finished hour rate, and then they will share 50% of royalties with you, usually for, you know, 5 to 7 years. Now, if you're in the States and you're going through ACX, like, you would go through that process, and I can't access that, so I don't know all of the nuances of that, but I understand that that's pretty much how it works. The standard union rate for American narrators is a minimum of $250 per finished hour. And I think a lot of a lot of authors maybe are that it sort of sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. It's a big investment to go into audio. You can find lots of narrators that will do it for much less than that. But I think it's like, I mean, I'm such a fangirl of the Spa Girls, and, you know, like, when I hear you all talking about the decisions that you're making as an indie author, depending on where you're at in your career, about the investment in editing or the investment in a cover. And I think that if you're at the point where, you know, you've got the experience and the success with a series or multiple series, and you're wanting to have a go at audiobooks, then you want to be thinking about those decisions as the business person that have been successful for you when you've gone and, you know, when that series went really well, you know. And I think I just think that it's kind of like you wouldn't print your ebook with a size 8 font, you know, and make it really difficult. And I think that one of the things that's quite hard, you know, when you're working in audio all the time, you hear everything, and the subtleties of the sound, and how what that's doing to your brain and your energy levels and everything. You become very aware of what's a pleasant experience and what's actually kind of quite abrasive. And I think maybe that analogy, it's like, if you give somebody, you know, a book in a tiny font, and it's like, this is very hard to read, you get tired really fast. You want somebody to listen to your audiobook and to just be enjoying it and not exhausted orally. And I think that the quality of the finished production, which you might not hear with your ears because you're not listening to audio all the time, is probably the difference in price point sometimes for somebody who might say, yeah, I can do it for X because I can do it for X. But like, if you want to give your narrator a living wage, you certainly want to be looking at, you know, $200 to $250 per finished hour. Royalty share is a really good option that a lot of narrators, like a lot of narrators, will do royalty share if they see that as a really good opportunity for them. Like if you're an author who's had success with a series, it's like you can see that author knows how to promote their books really well. That could be a really great opportunity for a narrator, and that's a great opportunity for an author if they're like, you know, that would be like $100 plus the royalty share per finished hour.
So how many per finished hours are there in, say, a 70,000 word novel? Like how does,
So
or 60, if you're working on the 60?
So you can, like, I know that I do about 160 words per minute. So I would do like a little calculation. I know like my 50,000 word novel is about 5.5 hours.
Okay.
Sorry, as I'm not great at doing maths really quickly.
Don't worry about the maths. That's cool. That's
like,
given me an answer.
Don't ask Cheryl.
Yeah, don't ask me.
Yeah.
I'm not the maths person in the group, so
Yeah.
that's cool. That gives us an indication anyway.
But,
so, okay.
but you know, as I said at the beginning, like what you want to think about with that per finished hour is that each of those finished hours may represent several hours of work from that narrator.
Yeah.
What about distributions? Can we move on to distribution?
Yeah.
How do we go about distributing our
So
ebook?
there are lots of places where you can distribute your audio book, and obviously if you're working with ACX, you're going to automatically just go down that funnel.
Yep.
If you're not able to work directly with ACX, there are aggregate distributors such as Findaway Voices, Authors Direct, and there's another key one which I just can't remember off the top of my head. This is an area that I'm kind of doing quite a lot of research into myself at the moment, because obviously I have some audiobooks of my own that I'm, really want to sort of, and authors always want to know this. And so it's like good for me and good for authors if I can say, hey, I've tried this other platform. So I'm going to give you two names. There's one called Glassbox, with 2 X's at the end, and My Soundwise. And I'm just at the beginning of my research into these, but I'm really looking quite seriously at like the apps on your phone, where so if you really enjoy audiobooks, you might have this app on your phone and you can buy that audiobook directly. And for the author, the royalty, you're going to get much higher royalties than if you go through ACX or Findaway as your distributor. So that's something that I'm kind of looking into. You could sell your audiobooks from your own website. I haven't investigated that for myself yet, but I know that there are authors who do that. But yeah, Findaway is going to distribute your book wide, and that doesn't interfere. Say you're on KU with your ebook, like if you're outside of the regions where you can't work with ACX, like how does that work? Is that going to be a problem to be in KU, but my audiobook's wide? No, it's not a problem. You can do that. Findaway is what I've used so far because it's pretty user friendly as a software, and then they're going to send you a royalty report on a monthly basis. If you can market your ebook well, then a lot of your audiobook sales are going to come, like it's this additional bonus, right? So your book is available in multiple formats. You can get giveaway codes through Findaway and ACX, I believe, and like promo codes, and then you can figure out things to do with those. But there is a website called audiofreebies.com, which some of your listeners might be interested in, where you can go and distribute promo codes. I'm really curious. There's Facebook groups for people who love audiobooks. One in particular I love hanging out in because they're so much fun, called Oral Fixation, and they are lovers of romance audiobooks, and they just crack me up. And they're so affectionate and affirming of their narrators, and they're always know about the like new releases, and so yeah, they're a really friendly group. And that could be a really good thing as an indie author to be having a look around in Facebook as to what people are listening to.
Yeah.
Does that cover the distribution side of things?
Yeah. So if you're someone who's decided that you want to get into audio, where do you look to find the right narrator? Like we were talking about hearing voice samples, where do we go to hear these voice samples?
Yeah, if you're in the States, like ACX is probably going to be a very natural like go-to, because there's a whole process there. But that's not your only option. If you're outside of the States, Canada, UK and Ireland, I believe, your first call might be Findaway. and you can go there and they will match a narrator for you. So you could post your ebook, like you could post your project, and they will say, and I want a narrator of this, experience, or this gender, and has these kinds of voices, and they will find a selection of narrators and share those with you for like auditions. So that's quite a guided, helpful process. I've been on, I'm on the Find a Way roster, but I haven't had any contracts through them yet, and it's interesting. Like, I was talking to narrators, and they say often just like once it gets started, then things will begin to, I've just been putting so much love into all of the self-published authors here. It's like I haven't had to rely on Find a Way, but I'd love to have a go at that. So you could just reach out to narrators, and you can find those narrators. Like you could look on Instagram, I guess, and a hashtag narrator. But Voices of Today is a website where there's a lot of narrators listed, and those narrators might be interested in royalty share. Narratorlist.com is another place where you can find narrators, and these are great websites because the narrators are all there with samples, and you can just troll around and have a listen, and which is just like good research for you anyway, right, in terms of just hearing what's out there. For people down in the Southern Hemisphere, the AussieNarrator.com, it is called AussieNarrator.com, and when you click on the website, it's actually Aussie brackets and New Zealand. So you can go there if you're looking for that particular accent that's if your book is set in Australia or New Zealand. But I have found, just like the self-published industry, narrators are really friendly and welcoming, and they will just be thrilled if you heard a voice and you're like, I love that. They would just be thrilled for you to reach out and have a chat with them about it, and I'm sure that they would point you in the right direction. And we would help each other with that, if your voice isn't a good fit for a project, you're going to point that, you might suggest somebody else, or that's been my experience anyway.
And I would suggest that if you're looking for a narrator, to not think necessarily about the voice that you most like, but to the voice that most fits your project. And it's kind of like covers, like, there's a cover that might be the cover that we think is the most beautiful cover in the world, but that doesn't sell because it's not what the kind of cover that our readers might want. And I think it might be the same for narrators. Would that be fair? Like, there'll be voices that you need to think about.
Yeah, I guess so. And I mean, I suppose that depends, how much research you want to do about what's happening in your particular genre. Maybe it depends on your budget. It might depend on the relationship. Like you might meet a narrator, just be like, oh, I really vibe with them, so that's going to be a good fit, because I'm really nervous about this process, because it seems to me that a lot of authors are just very intimidated by the process of getting into it. So yes, there's going to be a whole lot of different factors. But you do want to love it, right? Because it's speaking your story. It is speaking your story. And I think that the ability to tell the story, it's kind of interesting. Some people like you can hear these narrators, and man, their ability to drop into accents, and it's inspiring. It's really inspiring. But I also think that just being able to tell that story well, and to be able to tell it with heart and connection, is also really important. And I mean, I suppose that I've spent years working with students teaching, drama, and I would always say to them, if the integrity is there, your audience can't ignore it. It's like, it's impossible to ignore. If the work is there and you've actually, your audience cannot ignore it. And usually I find that is the case. So it's like you might think, oh, I've got to have, I want to have two narrators, a male and a female. Well, that's going to like double your price anyway, which good. I mean, like, I hope there are people out there that want to go and do that, because that would be great fun. But I want to have this accent, and it's got to be this, and it's got to be that. And then there are some people who just want to listen to a straight read. They might not want to listen to all of these accents. They might find that very, very distracting. I think most people do like to hear the characterization.
Oh yeah,
think so.
definitely. I do.
That's where the emotion is.
Yeah.
Um,
And you do. It makes a difference. Total difference.
I know that like there are a lot of authors who maybe are reading their own books on their YouTube channel and stuff like that, and their fans absolutely love it. I don't love it because I'm listening to that going, you know,
Doesn't work for you.
I want to hear the characters. I want to hear the characters.
Yeah.
But you know, that can be a fun thing too for people just to experiment. Oh, well, what would happen if I narrated my own? Maybe I want to have a go at doing that.
Because there's lots of other ideas in terms of audio that you could be doing, like in terms of marketing audio, you know, catching snippets and having it up online in various places. And I have heard of authors doing that, like maybe actually putting their audio file that's been professionally recorded up on YouTube and talking about actually that getting them sales. Lindsay Baroka has an interesting experiment she's been running. I haven't seen the final results, but she's been doing exactly that. So if you're interested in that kind of thing as another way to promote or look at your book.
And the sort of serialization of a book, you know, I think that's another idea that I've probably mentioned to my husband that I need to explore further. But yeah, like there's some quite interesting you know, opportunities there, I think, because that and there was a lot of talk at the conference about that kind of crossover between audio and podcasts, and like we're just becoming we just want to drop into a conversation, and Clubhouse is a new app that I discovered where you just can drop in and listen to people, and there's great audio books, Clubhouse groups where narrators are just reading and you can listen to that. That's more of a professional thing, but it's I just think that there seems to be an embracing happening of audio content, and I think if you were wanting to get you know, experimental with that, why not?
Because there's that song, Radio Killed the what is it? Video killed the radio star. And so we've kind of gone through this thing where, no one listened to radio for a while, or, you know, it wasn't as popular because you could watch the video. But I actually think it's coming around again. Like for us on the podcast, people listening to us and like you say, like driving to work, going to the gym, all these things. If you can be listening to something, I love it, listening to something else in my head while I'm...
I think it's very primal as well. There's just something about, you know, I'm sure we've all got these like, you know, memories that aren't memories of being held and told stories as babies, you know. Like I think there's something very nurturing about just having this little conversation, or just having, and there's an intimacy about it, you know. So and I wonder sometimes whether in today's world where yes, we're busy, but yes, we've been bombarded with, you know, there's a lot of anxiety out there. There's just something nice about this person
shutting off from everyone else and everything.
Just like listening to a story that's taking
zoning out.
Or I'm listening to a podcast and it's really nice. I'm having this great conversation with these wonderful women who are into all the same stuff that I'm into, you know, and it's just very nurturing as well, I think.
So if you're thinking of hiring a narrator, are there any kind of red flags to watch out for? Anything to sort of go, maybe this isn't the right narrator for me? Like, can you sort of think of...
I would be really wary of somebody who doesn't want to provide a contract for you, for starters, because I just think that that's, of any professional relationship, that's really important, right? So that it's really clear. I think if you're working in a different region from that narrator, you know, like there's lots of information out there, but there's no one place where you can get all of the information. So, you know, like I'm working with an American author at the moment, and I can't talk to her specifically about my experience of ACX. I know that that's probably where she will go to deposit her files, but I made that really clear with her before she engaged me to do that job, because I don't want to tell her something that's not necessarily true. And I think for authors who are outside of that ACX territory, it's just something to be mindful of, because sometimes people can say, oh, well, it's just this. And it's like, no, it's not just that. You want to know if you want to just listen. You really need to listen. Does it sound, you know, does it sound as good as the sample on Audible that I can down, you know, does it actually sound good? Listen to it on some decent headphones.
So get them to provide a sample.
Yeah, or get them to do a sample of your book. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just think that's a natural, right? Like you want to hear whether your book sounds good in their voice. You want to, I think you could ask them, what sort of specifications do you, what software are you using? What sort of mic are you using? Because if they've got some of that technical knowledge, that's going to reassure you. You don't, if they're recording, I would never, this is not where I record audiobooks. Where do you record? You want to know, because this is not an ideal place to record it. I record in this room down here, which is a small closet space that's been set up for the acoustics are correct, right? So you could just ask a few little questions about, I'd be really interested to know about your setup, where you're recording from, or what kind of microphone do you use and software. What are the specifications? I understand that there are particular specifications. How do you deal with that? And if they're kind of flubbing it, then I think that would be a red flag. And I have sadly had a few conversations with authors where that's pretty much been the case, and it's like, oh dear, that was a big waste of time and energy primarily for that author. And the proofing, I think that's really important. Like, you need to you want to listen to the first part of the book, the first maybe 15 minutes, and then how does the proofing work? So if I hear something and later in the chapter, how am I going to communicate with you? And if, oh no, you don't need to worry about it, because like I don't make mistakes, or no, that would
be a red flag, wouldn't it?
Yeah, totally a red flag. So you
actually want to know the whole process, really, don't you?
Yeah,
I would say.
I think so. I think it's. I think the sad stories come from like, oh great, this person's just said they can take care of it all for me. Oh, thank goodness, I can relax.
Yeah.
And we all want to be taken care of like that when we're kind of a little bit nervous about something. And then it's like, darn it, I kind of have to understand this myself. But hopefully, if you go into that relationship with good communication, and you're asking the questions, and that narrator can reassure you, then it's like, oh, I don't want Cheryl worrying about the specification. I just want her to know it's done, because she can trust me, because it's like I delivered on what I said was going to happen. And then you've got there's a confidence about that,
Yeah. And I think
I was just going to say, and can you ask for a finished price, or does that come later? Do you just get a sort of like an estimate?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So, like I said, for instance, I know how many words per minute I speak, so I can give a fairly accurate estimate of cost. Maybe it's no more than a couple of $100 out, usually by the end of the project. So I think that would be another red flag. It's like if we just got to wait and see how long it is when it's finished. I would be going, what? No, they should know how many words per minute they are speaking, and they should be able to provide an estimate of the duration of and that's the other thing, that as part of that process is that you would get a list of the duration of each file, and then that's the calculation of the finished price at the end.
Right.
So yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
And I think also there's a maybe expectation of what your narrator can do, maybe like that your narrator will provide you with this finished file, but then you, the author, need to be the one who's going and loading it to all the different sites, and you need to sort of be learning about how to market an audiobook and things like that. And so maybe just as ignoring you, Naomi, and just throwing it over to Wendy and Cheryl, are there things that you guys are doing with your audiobooks that you could kind of like, where are you promoting them and stuff? Like, are you using Chirp, for example?
I've got all of mine in SoundCloud, and I'm just using that as a promotional thing. So I then just go in there, and you can just load up your samples, and you can just go post to Facebook, because it's quite hard. You can't load an audio file straight to Facebook. Well, I haven't been able to work out how to do it, so I can do it through SoundCloud. So I've just put all my covers in there, and then I'll just can then just add that link and just put it in the sound, and then just. So I've done that, same as TikTok, same as everything else really from there. I just do it from SoundCloud. It's just worked out easier for me. But that's because I'm pretty techno useless. And this was a real,
you aren't anymore.
this was a very
Anymore.
simple thing for me to do. I also have 3 contemporaries done, and I've had some chirp deals. And I will probably move into doing a bit of YouTube stuff. To be fair, I haven't done a lot. The historicals have really just been done. So we're still waiting for Amazon. Love Amazon and their wisdom.
Audible. Lordy.
Plus
Yeah,
ACX had some of mine claimed by someone else. So I had to go in and claim the back, and rah.
That's quite a labyrinth, isn't it? Trying to find your way around all of that stuff.
Takes weeks.
It can do, and that's frustrating, and not being able to sort of say this book is going to be released on this date, because sometimes it happens really fast and then sometimes it takes a long time.
I would struggle to do a pre-order, to be fair, with audio. I just don't think I'd do it, because I don't think you could conceive. I think this has taken me 2 months to something like that from loading.
You want to give yourself a lot of time, actually, particularly if you're really thinking, I want to release, and I'm trying to do that this year. Like, I'm trying to release my audio and ebooks at the same time. So I was like, I've got to get this thing recorded. Like,
I take my hat off to anybody that actually gets it to happen when it's supposed to.
Yeah,
because
let's see. I'll see how that goes.
Good luck.
I mean, you couldn't make it. Like, I guess you would just be hoping that your audio is up, and then your ebook date, is set, but that the audio precedes the ebook. But
there's no way to control that, right? There's
no guarantees.
No. I put them all up at once, same time, all 3, and 1 and 3 are up, 2's not. So, and still not, like a week later. And like, people are like, I've listened to 1 and I've got 3, but I want 2 next, and I'm just like, dude, it's in the Amazon gods.
Trudy, there was something I thought I should mention when you were sort of saying about like the expectations of an author, of the narrator, and I do think this is a point worth noting, which is that you really want to make sure that your manuscript is in ship shape when you give it to your narrator, because like no, sure, like I can't. No. The thing is that. No, I can't help it, right? Because I'm a writer as well. I'm going to want to say, there's just a
Did you mean that, really?
Yeah, it's like, I want that just sounds weird. Like, I don't know whether that was what you wanted. But really, the narrator is not obliged to do that at all. Like, that they're going to read what you've given them. So you really want to make sure that what is in your manuscript is what if you've made a big boo-boo. I think that that's sort of. I mean, I'm all about the relationship, right? So I'm, and I mean, and the funny thing is, like, that whisper sync. So I had one author, and he was really concerned about that whisper sync. It's like, so every word had to be perfect, which I'm sure it was by the time he had done that. But the fact is, there's actually a percentage. You'd have to have a lot of difference between your ebook and your audio. Like, it would have to be significant for it actually not to transfer over using whisper sync. I had that stat, but I had that percentage, but I haven't written it down. But so for instance, when I'm proofing my own audio, it's really convenient, right? Because that sounds weird. I can just change. I can change it I can just do that very quickly myself. But I'm not actually proofing it word for word, because I can't be bothered. If it sounds okay, I know that it's not going to be. If it's flowing and it's like, I'm listening to the story, it's nice. But there's the odd word that was different from the ebook and the audio. I'm not going to bother changing that, because like it's quite time consuming, that following along. That's because I'm working for myself in that instance. If you're working with that narrator, you want to make sure, and mistakes will just happen. They just slip in there. But you don't really want to be saying, hey, look, when I heard that, I just think it would sound better if we just changed it to this. You're sort of asking a bit much of a narrator to do that, because all of those pickups, that's like, that's a lot of extra time back in the booth, and they're kind of, and what I like, pickups are a pain, right? Because no, they're not a pain, they're a part of the job, but the challenge of a pickup is your voice changes, like from the beginning of our podcast to now, our voices will have changed, right? Because we've been talking, and like I've drunk some water, or I had a coffee or something. So to do those pickups, the challenge for the narrator is I want it to sound seamless.
Yes.
You know? So anyway, I told you I go down rabbit holes. Sorry. I love talking about audio. It's fascinating. I love talking about audio, and I love helping. And the whole thing's just fascinating to me. This process of telling stories, writing them, speaking them, bringing them to life. Beautiful, magical thing.
It kind of reminds me of that. Well, I think anyway that most authors would have spent a lot of time reading either in their head or out loud using voices. And I think that
totally.
that's why audio seems like such a natural place to go after you've written a book.
Yeah.
And reading your book aloud actually is, and I know people talk about that as a proofreading thing, it is a really good thing to do. Like I notice tons of mistakes in my own as I'm narrating my own books. Like, oh gosh, you know, and that's after the editor and a proofreader. All that stuff. You know, I had one author, she's like, I'm firing my proofreader, and she was like, I cannot. She was really surprised, and like it was tidy, but she's like, I can't believe.
I always get horrified. I can't, you know, like
you just miss stuff. You just miss it. So you know, like reading it aloud for yourself is actually a really good way of checking errors. But these things happen. Lots of errors with friends.
Awesome. Well, I think we are coming to the end of our time together, Naomi. So thank you very much for talking to us.
It was wonderful. So informative. I've written a screed of notes.
I have too, actually.
Awesome.
I'm so happy for anyone to reach out. As you can tell, I enjoy talking about audio, and I'm very passionate about like the support I've had from the indie author community. Like I just want to help people, and it's not about necessarily working with me, but like pointing people in the right direction so they're having a great experience. And that excitement of like, if you're at a point where you think you're ready to do this, it's like, wow, that's just a privilege. If you want to have a chat with me about it, I'm always very happy to share through an email or chat.
Awesome. Okay, so if someone does want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, I do have a website, which is www.naomibartonvoice.com. And I am on Instagram as well, Naomi Barton Voice, and I post little sort of samples of things that I've been working on there. I have a Facebook page, but I find the Facebook page really hard to work with. Like I just sort of, it's like I go in there and so the website and Instagram are probably a really good way to find me.
Perfect.
And thank you so much for having me, guys. It's just a pleasure to have a chat with you. I'm a big fan.
We like fans. So Wendy, where can we be found?
We can be found at spargillspodcast.com, and you can come and join us on Facebook. But also we are now on Patreon. Yay! So we have many ways in which you can support us, which come with different things and different offerings. So if you've been listening for years and think you want to support us and to keep us going.
Not that we're going to stop, but it's just supporting us to continue, like in our ongoing journey.
We'll never stop. So you can find us
never stop.
Yeah,
we'll all be 100 still doing the podcast.
I don't know about that, but so that's where you can find us anyway. So come and see us on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. And thank you, everyone, for listening up to us today. I'm tripping over my words, but I'll try and get the outro out. Thanks for joining us. We'll be here again next week. But for now, farewell.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.